The last game of the day for me, I watched them out of order, was England over Canada. This one was a 2 in the morning jobby, so I've just watched it after watching the British and Irish Lions and Ireland and USA and Wales and Argentina. That's the order I watched them in. But kind of with this one on paper, you knew it was going to be pretty lopsided, and so it proved, so maybe less need to get up and kind of watch this one as it happened. We'll go over some of the key events, some of the stats, talking points, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how you thought the game went. 70 points to 14. Yeah, that's not great reading on paper for Canada. That's a couple of weeks in a row that they've shipped a lot of points. For England, it's a bit better than what they had against the States last week, especially if you take Ireland's result against the States into account, where Ireland really put the States to the sword, where England kind of struggled. Like they shipped quite a few points to the States in the second half last week. So, yeah, it's a more complete performance from England. But it must be said, in that kind of final 15 minutes where, you saw New Zealand really take the game away from Fiji, England didn't really score any points. Like, I'm looking at that with as kind of harsh a lens as I can. I mean, maybe you're just 70 points to 14 up and there's no need to really push for it. But, yeah, they didn't exactly, go for a bunch of tries towards the end of the game. They just kind of took the foot off the gas maybe a wee bit, or maybe Canada just came back into it. I think the former. But anyway, it started pretty well for England. Not so much for Canada. Underhill pretty much run a turnover straight from the kickoff. And then from there, they were able to maul it over. Blamire gets the first try of the game. That first maul try made it 7 points to 0. I literally wrote ominous because I was fortunate enough not to know the result for any of these games. I always keep off the social medias and whatnot as much as I can, apart from uploading a YouTube video. Occasionally, in opening YouTube, I've been spoiled to the result because I see the result literally on the YouTube landing page. But apart from that, it was pretty ominous, and so it proved to be. The difference between a lot of the Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams is the mauls, man. It's a real tricky one for them to get. That being said, Canada, when they got some ball, they were brave and decided not to kick for points. They might as well opt for touch when they got some penalties, so they couldn't score from the first one, but they did have a fair bit of time down in England's 22, which was pleasing. The final pass was a bit kind of lacking, but on 10 minutes, probably 9 minutes on the game clock, they did actually manage to get a try through the scrum half, Broad or Browder, whatever the pronunciation is for that. Anyone who speaks Afrikaans will probably be able to tell us what the correct one is for that. But good tap from him when they had England under a wee bit of pressure. The defence wasn't able to set in time after the penalty had been given, and by the time he tapped it, he goes over. And it's 7 points apiece. The Canadian guys quite rightly celebrate, as they did last week against Wales. They scored early, which is good. You never want the kind of the big zero on the scoreboard kind of hanging over you for too long. So they managed to get that away, which was good. That being said, 12 minutes, there's a penalty try for England. It's like a 5 minute or 13 minutes on the official clock. It's a maul, and Canada can't stop it legally, and it ends up being a yellow. So a yellow and 14 points to 7. The maul is just honestly, how many of these tries are more? I haven't even counted them. That's 2. Maybe we can count them as we go. Who doesn't get maul tries is Radwan. And people told me going into this game, and when the England squad was initially picked, he's a guy to look out for. I have been harping on about that for quite some time. He's got wheels. He gets the first of his 3 tries on 15 minutes. The defence doesn't bite in because he's got a man outside him. They kind of hang off him enough that there's a gap and he just goes through it. Like if they bite in, he just passes it and it's a try either way. But enough space for him to go through. And he motors on home. 21-7. Nelson, the fly half for Canada, kicked it dead when they did get a penalty, which was a bit of a bugger. It's like you don't need to be making unforced errors. Genji had a big line break on 19 minutes. He didn't pass when he probably could have passed, but he was motoring a bit himself. Eventually they got the ball wide to Singer, who goes over for a try, first of a couple for him, 28-7. And then Singer gets another one. He gives Nelson the fly half again. He gives him a big don't argue, and it's 35-7. Marcus Smith was kicking the goals from everywhere, as opposed to last week where he was a bit off. He had the kicking boots with him this week. Interestingly, he's been called up for the British and Irish Lions with old Finn Russell not being quite 100%. So congratulations to him. That's another bit of a middle finger to Eddie Jones, I would have thought, with Simmons there as well. Two guys who can't really easily get England caps and yet are good enough for their British and Irish Lions. It's interesting. But there you go, 35-7. Slade looked to have gotten a try on 28 minutes after the TMO had a look, though it was not given. It was very close to being grounded for him. I even had to check if he did get it because there was that many tries in this game. But no, Slade doesn't get on the board. Canada have a scrum on their own 5-metre line. They win a penalty and it kind of gives them a free exit. So they won a few scrum penalties in this one, actually. If England are looking at other stuff to work at, that maybe is one that they will look at. Now, there's an incident to talk about on 29 minutes. Because that one, it was a bit of a bad one. Ilnicki, the prop for Canada, cops a knee to the face from Lewis Ludlow. And Ludlow ends up getting yellow carded for it. And it's a weird one because the way they ref contact to the head in recent years is all about that framework. And the framework is all about what happened and not about what the intentions were. If you hit someone in the head with virtually any kind of force, it's automatically a red, unless there's some kind of mitigating factor. And the mitigating factor is usually like the person was dropping in their body height, or they were pushed by somebody else, which caused them to make that action. They didn't intend on it, but somebody pushed them into a guy who was already in the air trying to take a high ball. They wouldn't have hit the guy in the air, but they were pushed. That kind of thing. There has to be a mitigating factor, right? And he needs him in the head with enough force that it's probably a red. From what I've seen, and bro, I watch a fair bit of rugby. I'm not a ref. I hate reading the laws because that stuff boggles my mind. I'm not a lawyer. But you get a feeling for it, right? In most games, that's a red. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, he didn't mean anything by it. Obviously, it's, no malice, not intentional. But that's not the laws, man. It hasn't been for ages. You saw the Argentina game with a red card, Malia. I don't think he meant to try and take Hardy's head off, but he got his tackling technique wrong. What was the other game? The Sharks one against the British and Irish Lions. That one was an intent, like an elbow. But there was one other tackle. Oh, was it the American game with Ireland? That game. It was just a slightly high tackle. There was no intent behind it, but the intent doesn't mean squat. Right? The intent does not mean anything. But the ref is like, oh, well, a bit clumsy. It's a bit clumsy, so yellow card. I didn't see on the framework like, well, if there's a mitigating factor of he was just a bit clumsy, then it's mitigated to a yellow. I don't know, man. Like, I'm not one to want to see red cards, but it just is not consistent for mine. It just is not consistent. I feel like if it's reversed, it's probably red. Don't know. It's hard to say. Refs are humans, and home crowd, maybe. Home team, maybe. Don't want to... it's easier to give the lesser team a card than the home team. He still gives them a yellow. But, yeah, man, he need him to the face. Ilnicki doesn't come back on, man. He goes off for an HIA. He's got blood. Knee to the face with enough force. I wouldn't say it's just a tap in that he doesn't come back on the field. There must have been some force to it. Anyway, enough ranting about that. It's just, I only want consistency. All I ask for. And the framework, for the most part, is pretty consistent. I can usually call them. That one I would have called red, but apparently it's a yellow because it was clumsy. Anyway, from the yellow card, the game does move on. And England get another yellow card warning, actually, because they've conceded a few penalties at that point in the half. And it's another area, if you're looking at England with a critical lens, 10 penalties conceded in that first half, too many. Much cleaner in the second half. They improved. I think they only conceded 14 in the whole game, but it was 10 in the first half. So that would have been a slight area of concern. And the Canadians did punish them with the extra man, Lloyd. A try out wide, cut out pass from Lesage in the build-up, so it's 35 points to 14. That's a bit more respectable on the board. Not looking like it's going to be a total massacre at that point. But then right before half-time, Blamire gets his second one. Guess what? It's a 5-metre maul. Kind of surprising to nobody. They got the backs in there for that one, and 42-14 at half-time. So, yeah, the maul. I feel like Canada should just be jumping, because their maul defence on the ground was not doing anything. You might as well just jump and try to win it in the air, because you're not winning it on the ground. The England pack is just too powerful. Second half, Genge does get that try that he went close for in the first half. That one was after a penalty into the 22. Yeah, it was just any time they're in the 22, they just got punished, Canada. So 49-14. Radwan got another one. That one was a 2-on-1. Don Brunt and Radwan, one Canadian defender. Don Brunt unselfishly gives it to Radwan, who dives over for the try. Does well not to even let the Canadian guy have a chance of knock him into touch or anything. 56-14. It's all England at that point. Canada get a yellow card warning in their own 22, consecutive penalties being conceded. Ludlow looks to have got the next try right before he goes off and gets subbed from a maul, but the TMO chalks that off because there was the ball came back and went back to a player back in front. So, yeah, that one was chalked off. Not that it mattered. They did get one on 58 minutes. It was a maul try. Blamire gets his hat-trick. Canada just can't stop it, 63-14. And then Radwan gets his hat-trick on 61 minutes. That one, he just catches a high ball and just absolutely streaks through pretty much the entire field. That one's a proper bit of gas, wheels, pace, 70 points to 14. But that's the final score. That's the final score. So there's nothing else doing for pretty much like the final 15 plus minutes. Interestingly, that's kind of when Marcus Smith went off. You could say that's maybe part of it. Maybe it's the England guys taking the foot off the gas, which is understandable. I mean, you can tell them, don't give up, don't take the foot off, but realistically, that's not that easy. And Canada, to their credit, did keep fighting till the end of the game. They started winning a couple of lineouts of the English throws, so that was good for them. But they had the reverse happen to them when they had a attacking lineout in England's territory. They couldn't win it. England missed touch at one point when they had a penalty, so again, kind of taking their foot off the gas. Just seemingly what it'd be, just maybe mistakes. But anyway, it's pretty comfortable. Seemingly no big injuries, which is good. I mean, Elnicki, I think, is the main one who went off early and didn't come back on. Run meters finished 650 to 162, so pretty lopsided. Clean breaks is 12-2. Which again is pretty lopsided, but in the USA game against Ireland, it was 12-0. So Canada did 2 better than the USA in that game. Defenders beaten 40-11. Like Thokonasiga, Radwan, these guys were beating defenders for fun. Canada were really unable to affect the English breakdown, eh? They were way too comfortable. Really unable to kind of, get the isolated English runners and turn them over. But in contrast to that, the support play from England's players was really good. Sometimes you would see someone making a line break and it's like Sam Underhill's the next guy. So, yeah, that guy's got a big old ticker. Penalties conceded finishes 16-14 with Canada having 16. So, as I mentioned, England cleaned it up in the second half. Lineouts 13 from 16 for England. Obviously, they'll like that to be better. And 13 from 15 for Canada. So, they both missed a few. Lesage for Canada is the top run meter guy with 32, which is not very high, but the whole team only had 162, so there you go. He beats a defender and has a clean break. Rumble, the Lucy, has 17 from 19 tackles. The next best Canadian tackler has 10, so that guy always puts in a huge shift. For England, man, Yules has 13 from 13 tackles. Thokonasiga, 75 run meters, beats 5 defenders and has 2 clean breaks. Don Brandt, 68 run meters, 5 defenders beaten. Genge, 63 run meters. On the official stats on the broadcaster, they said it was like 100 run meters. I think the site I got uses Opta, and they must be using like AWS or something else. But either way, for a prop, he had a ton of run meters. 6 defenders beaten. Radwan, 174. So, yeah, man, the English guys just kind of ran riot. But as we say, the Tier 2 teams need more games like this. Funnily enough, they're only going to get better by playing more games like this. Also, the MLR, as its standard slowly improves over time, they're getting more coaches and more players. The quality of the local guys will improve. It's just kind of inevitable as the game improves there, as will the local talent. So, 70 points to 14. Pretty convincing for England. There's certainly stuff to work on, but for a team which is full of no British and Irish Lions, a bunch of young guys on their first or second cap, yeah, man. Just like the Irish team, there's still plenty of young talent coming through in England, which is also pretty pleasing to see when Eddie gives them a game. But, anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts. A bit disappointing from the Canadians and the Americans this weekend, but as I said, we'll have to give them more time, and see how things go in the not too distant future. You guys let me know your thoughts on the game. Do like the video if you managed to get all 16 minutes of the way through it. And I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.